All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Monty and Murdy College Football Show. Thank y'all for tuning in with us. And like I talked about in the last episode, man, Monty's still a little under the weather, so we'll be doing this one solo again. So if you hated the last one, got bad news for you. You might not like this one either, but I'll do the best I can to give y'all the best Week 9 college football preview on the key matchups this week and what my thoughts are, what my predictions are, and I guess we'll see kind of on the turn side of this how it works out. All right, so without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. Biggest matchup, at least that I believe, of this week. Game day is going to a different one, but this one is the one I think you should probably have your eyes on the most. We got, at least, me for obvious reasons here. We got Ole Miss traveling to Norman, Oklahoma to take on OU in an 11 a.m. kick. OU is currently a 4.5-point favorite there over number 8 Rebels, who just come off a tough road loss to a Georgia team that's really good. So let's break it down, right? Ole Miss brings in a higher-powered offense. Ole Miss has scored points against everybody they've played. I mean, obviously, that kind of goes without saying everybody scores points, right? But they put up 30 on Kentucky. They put up 41 on Arkansas, 45 on Tulane, 24 on LSU, 24 on Washington State, which was a sneakily close game. Lane Kiffin just kind of chalked that one up for his team. Didn't wake up. Student section didn't wake up. Kind of that whole typical Kiffin-esque deal there. But they're led by their quarterback, Trinidad Chambliss, who they did announce. Austin Simmons is back healthy. He is available for this game, but Trinidad Chambliss is still going to get the start. Former D2 guy. This is his first season playing D1 football. And he's looked really good for the Rebels. One of the Heisman contenders, looked really good in their loss, even in their loss to Georgia last week, which we broke down for y'all. And really your matchup for this one, you're going to be, before we dive too deep, right, there is going to be a little weather expected for this one. So maybe looking at a rain game here. So we'll see how that kind of affects what kind of game we see played. But overall, the matchup everybody wants to talk about is Ole Miss, really elite on offense. Kiffin scoring points, calling the plays there, versus the Oklahoma defense, which has been one of the top units in the country. Kind of willed this Oklahoma team to quite a few to 6 wins. And while the offense is kind of sputtered, trouble to find their footing. So that's the matchup everybody's going to talk about with this one. Is that, Ole Miss, or the Ole Miss offense versus the OU defense, and whether or not Lacey's going to be able to run the football, which this OU team hasn't allowed a lot of rushers to, they've been one of the top run defenses in the country. And so whether or not that OU defense can show up for this one, right? So we got a Sooner fan base that's well prepared for 11 a.m. kicks, right? They've had a lot of them back in the Big 12. So I expect the stadium is going to be loud here, even in the rain. I think they're going to show up for this one. Not many times has that OU fan base been able to welcome in a top 10 team and be able to have a defense that they can believe in, right? Where I think this one gets interesting is the OU secondary, where we've seen them get exposed a little bit, right? Auburn with Cam Coleman was able to take advantage of this OU secondary. There's been a couple different teams, on some deep shots. So if OU can limit the deep shots from this Ole Miss attack, right, offensive attack, whether or not they can limit them, try to make them one-dimensional. If they're able to stop the run game, that's going to obviously really assist with limiting that deep passing game. Because if you're not necessarily concerned about the run, you can contribute more to that passing game, more play a little bit more over the top, so that way you don't have to worry about getting beat deep. So it comes down, is the Ole Miss offensive line, are they going to be able to knock this OU defensive line off the ball? So key points, right? We need Ole Miss for them. I mean, this goes for any team, right? You want third and short. If you're going to go third down, you need third and short. You don't want to be in third and long. But you don't want to put Trinidad Chambliss in a position where OU knows he's throwing the ball. Because this OU defensive line, they're probably one of, if not the top unit in the country. They lead in tackles for loss. They lead in sacks. So they could really make you pay if they know you're dropping back to pass. So if that's the case and you're not able to run the ball effectively, could be a long day for Trinidad Chambliss and that Ole Miss offense. Turnovers, it'd be nice if the OU defense could force a couple turnovers. They haven't been really good at it this year. It's not something that they really thrive under. Some of the opportunities have been there. Sometimes they've been dropped, but just haven't been able to quite be able to lead the turnovers. Have a whole bunch of them this season. So definitely something to look forward to. If Ole Miss does give OU an opportunity, which Trinidad Chambliss has not shown he's not shown the tendency to do that, right? So whether or not OU is going to be able to match up on the defensive side of the ball, really it comes down to the play of the front seven. And if they can limit the Ole Miss rushing game, it could be a really long day for Trinidad Chambliss and the Ole Miss offense, as long as OU is able to limit the run game, provide that extra help for those deep safeties to limit that over-the-top passing game, keep yourself from getting beat deep. And overall, I think that's going to be where OU focuses. I think Lane Kiffin will probably have some schemed up. This is probably a battle of the minds, right, between him and Brent Venables. Brent Venables being one of the top defensive coordinators for the past 2-3 decades in college football. Lane Kiffin being one of the top offensive minds for the past decade or decade and a half or whatever, however long he's been in it. And, so this is definitely a matchup in the mind. So they're both going to have some stuff ready to try to fool to one another. So it's just going to come down to which players can be able to execute that scheme properly and give their team a chance to win. Now we flip it, right? Let's go to the OU offense versus the Ole Miss defense. The Ole Miss defense they've been susceptible, right? And the OU offense has not been their top producing unit. So it kind of comes down to, it's all right, which team's going to figure that part out? OU, they showed it against South Carolina that they starting to maybe find a little bit of a run game. There's a possibility of both their starting right tackles being out. They're 1 and 2 deep on that one, so maybe starting like third string right tackle, which could possibly hinder that running game against a really good Ole Miss edge defenders. So not an ideal situation there for OU. But if they're able to run the ball effectively, very confident. John Mateer, he's got another week healing from that hand surgery. Obviously, you saw him in the Texas game. It wasn't his best performance. And he said after the game, he's like, yeah, it didn't bother me. The hand didn't, no issues out of the hand. But when you're watching him play the game, right, he's wiping blood. The hand's actively bleeding. I would say that is probably is something that is bothering you, right? If you got a hand that you recently had surgery on and it's actively bleeding while you're trying to throw a football with that same hand, probably something lingering there. So we got John Mateer, another week healthy, another week removed from that hand surgery, another week of practice. So I expect John Mateer to be sharp. And with that OU defense playing with that home field crowd, I think this one, so it opened at a 4.5. It is now a 5.5 point spread for the Sooners there. What that tells me, right, is normally when you got a higher ranked team and they're playing a lower seeded team's favored, that means Vegas is trying to get you put money on that higher rated team, right? Because you're like, oh, number 8 Ole Miss is never going to lose to 13 Oklahoma. And if you're giving me the points there, I'm going to take those all day. So maybe setting y'all up there. I wouldn't touch this one. just because there's a lot of variables that you just don't know. The weather's a factor. How this Ole Miss, or because like I said, this is the best offense that Oklahoma's faced this year. But this is also the best defense that Ole Miss has faced. So, you just kind of don't know how that matchup's going to go, and what Ole Miss you're going to get. Do you get the Ole Miss that showed up against Georgia, or do you get the Ole Miss that showed up at Washington State? Don't know. Which version of John Mateer are you going to get? Do you get the Texas John Mateer, or do you get the John Mateer that we've seen in all the other games, where he's able to play clutch football, move the ball down the field effectively? He has shown a tendency for turnovers, and he hasn't produced as many touchdowns as you would like. And we'll see if that OU running game is able to continue that success. I think there's some opportunities there for them against this Ole Miss defense. Obviously, we just saw Georgia run the ball for 225 yards against the same Ole Miss defense. So if OU's kind of able to reciprocate some of that, then maybe a good option there for Oklahoma. So for this one, man, I like the Sooners at home. That doesn't mean I don't think Ole Miss is a good team. Like I said, they can lose this one and then go on, win their next 4 and be 10-2, and be right in the mix of the college football playoff. This one I think is a must win for Oklahoma. You can't drop this one at home because you got some tough road games on the way coming, with having to travel to Tennessee, having to travel to Alabama, to Tuscaloosa. We talked about it last week's episode how good that Alabama team's looking. So not one you can drop for OU here, and I look for the Sooners to get a win over Ole Miss. Let's move on to the next game. We got Missouri traveling to Vanderbilt. This is where College Game Day is going. It's number 15 versus number 10. Vandy is currently a 2.5-point favorite, and I got to be honest with you, I don't know if this is another game I probably wouldn't touch if I was a bettor. Just because you've seen this Missouri team play really good football. I understand they had a close loss to Alabama, and they were in a dogfight against Auburn, but that Auburn team's been in dogfights with everybody they played. I know the Georgia game doesn't look as good, but I mean, Auburn played Georgia really close. They played Missouri really close. Played Missouri to overtime. They played OU really close. Everybody who they've been beaten by so far this year, they have played to a really close game. So I think that Auburn team is a little better than what their record reflects, especially what they're able to do on the defensive side of the ball. I think Durkin's got that Auburn defense playing pretty well, and we'll just see what they're able to do against this Vanderbilt team as this Missouri team travels to Vanderbilt. Bo Prabula, last we saw him really was against that Alabama team, and he had a couple of costly turnovers in that one. He's matched up against Diego Pavia, who is probably nobody you can make an argument for that's more important to their team than Pavia. And man, it's tough to say. For this one, I originally had Vanderbilt picked. But what I can say here is it's what you saw. If Missouri's able to carry on what they had early on in the season, with Ahmad Hardy, and if he's able to run the football the way he has been, this is going to be a long day for Vanderbilt. And that's kind of where I lean to, is I think a run game can travel. It's not hard to do, right? Run game doesn't really need a lot of communication outside of the offensive line talking to one another. So if the run game's able to travel and you don't rely on Bo Prabula to be kind of the savior for your team, then I think that's a game that lines up very well for Missouri. On the other side, I think Missouri defense matches up well. Obviously, the Vanderbilt team, we already said everything flows through Pavia. He's their leading rusher. Obviously, he's their leading passer, is their starting quarterback. So everything kind of flows through Pavia and what he's able to do with both his legs and his arm. So Missouri's going to key in on that, and I just think Missouri might have a little more balanced attack. So I'm actually going to change. I know originally I told y'all, right? Vanderbilt's favored. I said I was going to go ahead and take Vanderbilt with this one. I think I'm going to go with Missouri. Be able to travel to Nashville, get the win there. I think Ahmad Hardy is really good. probably one of the top backs in the country. I mean, he's already got 840 yards rushing on the year. So if he's going to be able to continue that success, both teams of these are 6-1. I don't think this is a game that eliminates either team. I don't think their season's riding on the line with this one. Obviously, it's going to get a little uncomfortable if you lose this one as Vanderbilt, because you got Texas coming to town the next week, followed by that Auburn team, or traveling to Jordan-Hare, playing that Auburn team. We'll see if Hugh Freeze is still coaching there by that time. It kind of depends. And then they go to Kentucky, and then they got to travel to Tennessee. So like I said, not an easy road forward for Vanderbilt. Missouri, not easy either, right? They got A&M still on the schedule. They got OU, and they got an Arkansas team and Mississippi State that's been both been scoring a lot of points. So they'll need kind of their best performances for all their remaining games. So like I said, I'm gonna switch my pick here. I think Missouri, if they're able to run the ball with Ahmad Hardy, I think they'll have a little bit more success here than what they did against Alabama. And yeah, I think Missouri honestly, Alabama and Auburn, I think they'll have a little more success here against Vanderbilt. So yeah, I got to go with Missouri here in a 2:30 kick at Vanderbilt. So yeah, give me Missouri to win the game there. So obviously cover the points as well. Next game we just talked about them. Texas A&M traveling to LSU. One of the things when I was doing a little research on this game, right? A&M hasn't won in Baton Rouge since they joined the conference. And I think that's kind of why you're seeing this point spread, right? You just saw this LSU team. They've lost to Ole Miss. You've seen them just drop another game. Why am I drawing a blank on who they just dropped a game to? So we just talked about it, right? They just dropped to Vanderbilt. They dropped a game to Ole Miss. But this A&M team, that's the number 3 team in the country, they're 7-0. They're only favored by 2.5 at LSU. And the matchup predictor really likes, for what more than what you would think, right? At least from the narrative of these two teams. LSU's number 20 team in the country. But it's Baton Rouge, and as LSU always does, they get a night game. So LSU at night, tough place to play. But what I really like, I haven't seen the injury report yet to see if they're going to get Le'Veon Moss back for this one. But I really like A&M's ability to run the football. I think that really helps you out when you're playing in these big games. And I like A&M's defense. They've been playing really good ball up to this point, and I just don't see a point where LSU is going to be able to match them as far as offensive, defensive output. I think A&M may be able to run the football. Marcel Reed, I think, is a really dynamic playmaker for an LSU team that struggled against Pavia. I think you're going to get kind of more of the same dose here with Marcel Reed, maybe a little more explosive even. And A&M's got a really good supporting cast, right, with Mario Craver, Casey Conception, just outstanding receivers. That if A&M's not able to run the ball, I just don't know if Nuss is going to be able to make enough plays to be able to get A&M or LSU a win at home. So give me A&M to go and get their first win since joining the SEC down in Baton Rouge, so and Death Valley. So I like A&M in this one, and man, you got to really like where A&M is as a team, especially if they're able to get a win here. They got a tough matchup against Missouri and Texas. But, man, looking at them as right now probably one of the SEC favorites, the last remaining undefeated team in the SEC. So, man, Mike Elko's got them boys playing some good ball right now. And whenever you think about the matchup, I think A&M's defense is really good. LSU struggled to run the ball, so if they can limit the run game and make Nussmeier beat them, I just don't know if that's a good recipe for LSU to get a win, even at home, because I think A&M defense is going to travel, as defenses do. Defenses travel just because home crowd's quiet for their offense, and then you got the really balanced attack that is the A&M offense with Marcel Reed, Ruben Owens, Le'Veon Moss, and obviously those great receivers that I've already named. So really balanced attack there, and I just think A&M is they're going to be able to make Nussmeier a little uncomfortable. So give me A&M to go get the win there and to move on to 8-0. Next matchup, we got Big 12. So we try to mix it in, right? Obviously, the SEC has a bunch of big matchups every week, so you got to discuss those just because they're so pivotal to both the college football playoff and the overall national standings. But there's a big one in the Big 12. You got BYU, who just went 7-0, just had a big win over Utah. We talked about it. Traveling to Ames, Iowa, to take on Iowa State. And Iowa State is a 2.5-point favorite in this one. It's going to be a 2:30 kick on Saturday. And really, you just wonder if the BYU offense is going to continue to be able to score points. Iowa State, they've struggled defensively in some of their losses. They gave up 24 to Colorado, 38 to Cincinnati, and their secondary is known to they've at least been exposed to be able to have a tendency to give up big plays. So we'll see if BYU and their playmakers can exploit it. See if Bachmeier is able to take advantage of some of those things. However, when you get late in this college football season, it gets really, really tough for me to continue to pick undefeated teams, because you're like, okay, eventually the card's not going to shake out in their favor, right? It's like they've, because college football, there's a luck factor in it, and so there's a lot that comes down to it. So it's eventually this undefeated team's got to get tripped up, and the longer they get along, the more hesitant I am to make that pick. And I think right here is going to be where BYU, coming off a big win in the Holy War, taking down a ranked Utah, emotions are high. Iowa State playing for their season. As they're already 5-2 and 3 losses, Big 12 team, you're not going to get in the playoff. And playing at home, I got to go with Iowa State here. I think they're going to be able to, their 3-3-5 defense. I got to believe that they're going to be able to figure out something to be able to limit that BYU passing game, limit the deep shots, and try to restrict Martin down. Martin's got 774 rushing yards on the season. But as we talked about in last week's episode, I mean, BYU hasn't played the most gauntlet of the schedule. Their first test was really that Utah team. And Iowa State, on the other hand, has played some really good teams. They've played them close. They beat a really good Iowa team that's still sitting at 5-2. They played Cincinnati really close. And they got this one at home, and they know Matt Campbell, they know what's riding on this one. So I think Iowa State's going to be able to come in here, slow down BYU passing attack. And like I said, that doesn't mean BYU's eliminated. They got a lot of ranked games on their schedule left. It's just 7-1. Iowa State improved to 6-2, and the Big 12 just gets a little bit muddier in the water. So, yeah, I got to go with Iowa State there, 3-3-5 defense, be able to make some plays and slow them down. We'll go on to, as y'all know, we love some G5 talk. We love some Group of 5 talk. Group of 5 football is where some of the best, I believe some of the best football in the country's played, at least some of the best games. And if you're not paying attention, you might miss out on them. Huge one with college football implications. We mentioned it last time USF went and played North Texas. Well, in this one, we got USF going to play 6-1 Memphis, who's coming off a unexpected loss to UAB, who had just fired their coach. And UAB's hosting USF. And what's weird is that USF is favored by 4.5, but the matchup predictor on ESPN, it's got this as a 50-50 toss-up game. However, whenever I'm breaking this one down, what UAB was able to do on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, they scored 31 against Memphis here. I just think this USF team is probably one of the more balanced teams in the group of five, right? They play whenever they match up, obviously not against Miami. They just didn't really match up well on the line of scrimmage there, which is to kind of be expected, right? That's where kind of your biggest gaps come in. These group of five teams are able to find some playmakers. They're able to find a guy who can wheel and deal the football. It's just finding those big guys on the O-line and D-line to be able to move people back and move people off the ball is where these G5 teams kind of tend to struggle whenever they match up against these Power 4 opponents. But USF is one of the more complete teams, I would say, is in terms of offensive, defensive production in the group of five. With Brown, I mean, we saw him against North Texas, right? The dude is just electric. It's absolutely electric. Alex Golesh calling the offense here for USF. I think they're going to score a lot of points, but like I said, their defense is really what kind of impresses me. How they're very turnover prone. They're able to create a lot of turnovers, create a lot of havoc. So if they can get a couple turnovers out of the Memphis team, I just don't know if Memphis is going to be able to match USF's offensive output and what they're going to be able to do on the offensive side of the ball. Even with this game being in Memphis, I like USF here. And that's boils down to the biggest question, right? Is this going to be a track meet? Are both offenses going to go up and down the field? Even in that kind of game, I still like USF. I think there's a lot I can believe in this USF team, as opposed to Memphis, especially coming off the loss. You saw what happened against UAB. Obviously Memphis, they're kind of renowned for they played Arkansas really close. That's kind of where they won in Arkansas. Probably what ended up costing Sam Pittman his job there. But able to win that game. But I mean, still a very close game, kind of a shootout style. Outside of that, not a lot on their schedule. And where's this USF team? I mean, they're still holding over that win over Florida. And you thought they were going to get the trifecta and be able to, beat, almost all the Florida teams. But unfortunately fell short there against Miami. But, I mean, everybody points to that big win versus North Texas where they were in a dogfight at halftime. North Texas defense is able to turn North Texas over coming out of the half a couple times. And be able to give USF a big lead there. So USF ends up getting the win. And so for this one, I think USF's defense is going to be able to create a couple of those turnovers. They don't need a bunch. They just need one or two, as long as their offense isn't giving up the ball, and be enough to get USF a win here, setting up a really exciting matchup here in I think it's 2 or 3 weeks on the 15th against Navy. So it'd be a USF at Navy game. Potentially setting that one up to be really exciting. Overall, the American seems like the conference that's going to be able to get that group of five team. They just got a lot of really good teams playing football. They have Tulane, who's 6-1, Memphis, who's 6-1, North Texas, who's 6-1, and they got Navy, who's 6-0. So a lot of teams playing really good football there. Don't count out Temple. I told y'all about that Temple team. I think on like our week 3 or 4 preview episode, they're playing really good ball. They're 2-1 within the conference, 4-3 overall, but 2-1 in the conference. So still with an outside chance there to make that conference championship game. And you got to think that's what it is, right? The group of 5 auto bid is, it's the conference champ. So the highest ranked conference champ is who ends up getting that college football playoff bid. So they said, if you're in that conference race, you still got a shot at it. But yeah, that's the last matchup I have to go over. So going with USF, just to kind of recap, USF over Memphis. We're going with Iowa State over BYU, ending BYU's undefeated season. We're thinking Texas A&M is going to go ahead and get their first win in Baton Rouge since joining the SEC. We like Missouri over Vanderbilt. I just think Missouri's balanced rushing attack. I think they're going to have a little more success there than they did against Alabama. And they're going to be able to win it. And we like Oklahoma over Ole Miss. I know my bias is going to get called out for that one, but I just really like how the Oklahoma defense matches up against the Ole Miss offense. And I really like the matchup for the Oklahoma offense against the Ole Miss defense, which is probably one of the worst units that OU's faced, at least as far as their Power 5 conference or Power 4 games that they played, right? Auburn's a really good defense. Michigan's a really good defense. Texas is a really good defense. Who else we got? South Carolina, they're a really good defense. I understand, Dylan Stewart went out of that game, so some question marks there. So, like I said, it's a lot of good games. There's even more that we didn't talk about. If you're looking for a Big Ten matchup, watch that Illinois-Washington game. Washington is probably one of the more underrated teams in the country. Illinois is going to be traveling to Washington, and I like Washington to cover that 3.5-point spread there. So like I said, I like Washington there. There's also a big game. We saw much Texas struggle with Texas struggle with Kentucky last week. Now they got to go to Starkville and take on the Cowbells and the Fighting Jeff Lebby's in Mississippi State, who's known to score a lot of points. So we'll see if Sarkisian can get that Texas offense rolling and be able to match Mississippi State's offensive output. Other than that, man, I thank y'all for tuning in. Thank y'all for bearing with me, as I know this is, like I said, it's not something I'm kind of used to doing as the solo podcast. Usually got my boy Monty with us, and we'll hope he'll be able to join us next week. Till then, as always, tell your friends about the show. Subscribe to the show if you don't, wherever you listen to the show, whether it be on the podcast platform, Spotify, all that, Apple Podcasts, or you watch on the YouTube show, man, subscribe, tell your friends about it, tell your family about it, make them make accounts and subscribe, whatever you can do to help grow the show a little bit. We thank y'all for tuning in, and we'll catch y'all next week on the Monty and Murdy College Football Show. Peace.